Hey, botany class. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up the chapter today. We're gonna do it by video lecture because I'm homesick with the flu, unfortunately. So, sorry for the gross sounding voice, but that's what we'll have to work with. So, we're gonna go ahead and finish up these last 9 slides, and then we have I'll put another video as well, which is a really good animation of fern life cycles on Edmodo in the same post. So, all your subplans will pretty much be here. So, here's what we left off with. We said that the croziers were the sporophyte of the fern frond that'll eventually branch out to become a big fern frond like this. We mentioned that it was also called a fiddlehead because of this shape, and also a monkey tail for the same reason. The fronds are divided into segments called pinnae. When it comes to reproduction, the sporangia are stalked, of course. Like they have those big leaves, the big fern fronds that you and I see. The sporangia can be on the lower surface, confined to margins, found in clusters all over the place, but when we find them in a cluster like this, they're called a sorus, or sori, and they're covered by an indusium. And so this here is this little green flap of tissue called an indusium, and then the sorus is out here. Not all ferns have that indusium, just food for thought. There you go. And each of these sori looks like this when you zoom in on it. And basically, one sorus has many, many, many spores and lip cells that are going to rupture pretty easily. And so when the water amounts in the air change, it'll cause this to kind of shrink back and rupture those lip cells, and they'll throw the spores out. So these heavy walled brown cells back here is called the annulus. That's what actually launches the spores. Okay, so meiosis occurs in sporangia, of course. That's how we form spores to get those haploid cells out of diploid cells, is meiosis. When the spores land in the ground, hopefully land in the ground, they grow into this little gametophyte that's kind of shaped like a heart, and that's called a prothallus. Thallus is the body of the plant, but before it's a true thallus, it's a prothallus. It's a pretty simple structure. Some little roots, little stem that grows out kind of flat under the ground or right along the surface of the ground. They're only one cell layer thick. They're very, very fragile. And they can have archegonia and antheridia at the same time. Like we've seen before, the archegonia has the egg, the antheridia has the sperm. If there's water, it can swim, make a zygote, and the zygote develops into the young sporophyte. The gametophyte, where most of it's going to die, and the sporophyte will grow independently up out of the ground into that fiddlehead or crozier that we see. And so here's kind of the whole system together. We go through meiosis in a sorus. We, with the help of this structure called the annulus, there's a very good picture of it here. We throw the spores in the ground. The spore lands, germinates into a prothallus. There's antheridia, archegonia. The sperm swim to the egg, make a zygote. Gametophyte in the ground pretty much dies down. Sporophyte grows out, makes ferns, grows into a big underground rhizome as well with some true roots. When the fern grows up large enough, it forms sori again. They may or may not be covered by a big indusium. They undergo meiosis, and we start again. That's fern reproduction. So, we see in the fossil layers a lot of plants that look like ferns, or at least relatives of ferns. In the Carboniferous period, 320 to 250 million years ago, there were ferns that were very large, like the size of trees, were primarily abundant. The seeds were found on some fossil tree ferns, which is kind of cool. And when we use ferns for human relevance, people use them as houseplants because they work as air filters. We also use them for outdoor ornamentals to make places look more attractive. You can cook some of the rhizomes and eat them as food, kind of like a potato. Numerous uses in folk medicine. Fern fronds, if they're large enough, can be used to thatch roofs on houses. basketry and weaving, especially the central rachis of the fern frond. It's very strong. So a fossil is really any recognizable prehistoric object. Um, it could be a number of different things, and we're going to talk about a few of them. But conditions for forming fossils, pretty much you need a quick burial and a lot of sediment. And you don't get that condition very often, but you can occasionally. Hard parts are more likely to be preserved than soft parts of fossils. And so there's a whole bunch of different types of fossils, and every book kind of cuts them out just a little bit differently. But your book says there's molds, casts, compressions, and imprints. And basically, after a fern or a plant is buried in sediment, the sediment hardens into rock, the organic material is left away, but the imprint of that plant is left as rock now. If there's air spaces still in that rock, excuse me, that's called a mold. If silica fills that space, it's called a cast. And then a compression occurs when objects are buried by layers of sediment and overlying shear weight compress them into a thin film of really just an outline. So here's an example of a compression fossil where you're not getting a nice 3D image of what that looks like. You're getting a 2D crushed version, which is fine. It works. So the image of an impression is called an imprint, where maybe the fern leaf wasn't there anymore, but it was at one point, and then it moved away and just left an imprint. Think like tracks, of animals, humans. Use something similar to that. Coal is a specific type of compression. Compress the plants long enough and they become coal. It's kind of cool. Petrification is the idea that you get rock-like material, and we really preserve that original cell-like structure. We just wash away the organic stuff and replace it with minerals. This is like petrified log, petrified wood. We keep pretty much the same shape of the log, but we've removed all the organic stuff and replaced it with hard minerals, so it's become a rock. It's shaped exactly like the log. Chemicals in the solution have to infiltrate the cells in the cell walls, and those chemicals crystallize and harden, and we get that original material and shape preserved. Another place where you can find ferns and fern pieces is in coprolites. And a coprolite is the poop of prehistoric animals and humans, and we can see a lot of plants and plant parts in that. There's also unaltered fossils, where the organism fell into oil or water that lacked oxygen and did not permit decay. So you get kind of this picture-perfect fossil of what the animal actually looked like. So that is the whole chapter. Thank you for your time. Sorry for being out sick. And there's another video in this same post.